Hey everybody, this is TJR,
This is Superfan.
and we're here to discuss episode 9 of the Beatles Anthology, the new episode. And
New.
I walked in with, I would say, mild expectations. I certainly wasn't expecting the world from this. I was expecting to maybe just get an add-on, a nice, pleasant add-on, was my thought when I walked into this.
Update.
Yeah, did you have any big expectations for this?
No, not really.
I have to admit that my expectations were more than met. They were exceeded, in my opinion. This, to me, feels like, for now anyways, a fitting ending. This was a lot more than just an add-on, a bonus. That's kind of what I was expecting. A bonus feature, basically. A little bonus feature is what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I didn't expect the world out of this, but I ended up seeing a lot more archival footage than I would have expected that I'd not seen before.
Yeah, who knew there was more out there?
Yeah, who knew? I found out, I learned and discovered things that I had not heard about before as well.
Yeah.
There was a scene very early in the early part of the series that I remembered when I watched it on broadcast TV, where Ringo talks about how after he joined the Beatles, it was like he had gained 3 brothers that he didn't have. And after we had talked about episodes 1 through 3, I realized, I didn't see that scene in this new version here.
Mm-mm.
I didn't see that scene. I didn't hear it. And I thought, well, that's a real shame, because that was a really kind of a sweet thing. And then in this episode 9, I find out why. Because he says it in the present tense of the 90s interview footage. There's a lot of 90s interview footage that I've never seen before or heard.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them playing together, not just in the studio, which there's a lot of that I've never seen and heard before, where they're working on what I've always referred to as the reunion tracks. But also just them sitting together, Ringo on drums, George and Paul on guitar, singing old cover songs. I've seen some of that footage, bits of it, segments of it.
But this was entire songs.
Yeah, we get to see a lot more of it, hear a lot more of it. Also, the 3 of them just sitting out on the grass together with coffee and ukuleles, and
It felt like the cameraman just kind of wandered over.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, more of that, but mostly the 3 of them with Jeff Lynne in the studio, trying to figure out how in the hell are we going to do this? How in the hell are we going to take this cassette tape that's unfinished, that's not in any time, there was just him on the piano there, and there's no click track for it. How are we going to put this together? I want to put a pin in that real quick, because I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I want to just talk about how this begins with the project that was originally going to be called The Long and Winding Road, which was a documentary that Neil Aspinall was trying to put together, and how he was collecting footage for all this. It begins there with that part of the history, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I didn't know that before this. This was new information.
I knew about this documentary, but I didn't understand how it connected to this.
Yeah, I was kind of aware of it, but I didn't know that so much work in gathering the material had gone But,
and then set aside, but then was then resurrected when they decided to do the anthology.
well, I think that was probably what made it possible, because it was all there.
Yeah, and he'd put it in chronological order, but that everybody was just, at that point, the four Beatles were at that point just, sick of each other. Some of them weren't on speaking terms or the best of speaking terms, that there was just, a lot of animosity and tension.
I forget who said it, but somebody said, well, we couldn't have done it then. We were at war.
Yeah, I think it was George who said it. We were at war at that point. And yeah, there was that time. And so I appreciate that it connected the history of these two things. So in a way, it very much picks up where episode 8 left off.
Yeah.
It does pick up from there in many respects. Again, I had heard some talk that this feels like its own separate thing outside of the 8-episode series. But for me, the fact that it connects to that history in the early 70s, to me, it does connect it as part of the story. And something that also connects it, that George said also, is that he talks about how they could not have done anthology in the 70s because they hadn't had enough distance from it to be able to really talk about it with clear heads and to have a fresh perspective. And at the same time, when they were making anthology and they were working on these reunion tracks, I also would have to say that's why they really probably couldn't talk about that in anthology, any of the get-together in the 90s, because, again, there needs to be some distance to be able to look back on what happened and put it in a better perspective. So in many respects now is, unfortunately, I wish they could have done it before George had passed on, but with this distance of time, they're better able to construct, an accounting of what happened. And it doesn't feel like George Harrison is gone when you watch this episode. There's so much interview footage with him in the time or surrounding the time. Some of it, there's, of course, we notice the difference in haircuts. In the studio, he's got the short haircut.
There was some continuity issues with his hair.
But what's amazing about it is that as I was watching it, I kind of almost forgot that George Harrison wasn't there anymore. Almost.
And that's the thing, is they didn't have any new footage from current.
Of them looking back? No, it was all put together. I think you're right. Now that you mention it,
original project.
Yeah, I think you're right. The footage is all from the 90s, where they're discussing all of this, and talking about how it started out first with the documentary, and then how finally different aspects, different incidents played into the idea of doing these reunion tracks. And George Harrison again talks about how everybody's accounting of these things is different. Ringo's going to give you a different take on this. I'm going to give you a different take on this. Paul's going to give you a different take on this. And if John was here, he'd give you a different take. That memory is a tenuous thing and everybody remembers things differently. And he talks about how after Roy Orbison passed away in the Traveling Wilburys, there was some toying with the idea of replacing him, on recording anyways, with Elvis. A recording of Elvis.
Which is just weird.
Which is crazy to think about, that they toyed with this idea. George, at the end of the day, felt it was too gimmicky, but him talking to Yoko about it in casual conversation led her to say, I've got some tapes of John. Now, Paul tells it a little bit differently. I'm guessing both stories are true, but who knows how it all worked out. But that's another thing, is that George, in what little video elements I saw prior to this, and everything I read, it always seemed like George was the grumpy one, was the grumpy old man, kind of being dragged into it. He's definitely the more stoic.
I think that's just
but that just might be him and his just the way he is,
He's
and
the quiet people.
he's the and his commitment to spirituality. I think I can see him as being more stoic. He's the more stoic one, definitely. But watching the footage, no, he's not looking like he's been dragged into this. He's having a good time.
Yeah, he would.
And I mean, he's challenged. They're all very challenged by the limitations of working with this cassette tape, these cassette recordings of John, and they go to great length. And this was my favorite part of this, was watching the three of them with Jeff Lynne trying to figure out how to do this. And honestly, if Wingnut Films, which is who, this is kind of this version has been put together. I mean, Wingnut Films is involved in, of course, getting the audio separated, upgrading the visuals and all of that. But this is very much their production, just like with Get Back. And it's also Apple's production as well.
I don't think this would have happened without Wingnut.
Oh yeah, I agree. But I wouldn't mind seeing like a mini documentary of just the recording sessions for the reunion tracks.
Yeah.
I know there's a story there of watching it from the first day in the studio, trying to get these tracks done. And there, and Paul mentioned, I think it was Paul mentioned, there was a year separation between Free as a Bird and Real Love, that a year passed before they worked from one to the other. And I had no clue that much time had occurred between the two. And then, of course, the attempts, we see some of the attempts at Now and Then. And just briefly how it just wasn't working out. It was just too hard. And it was abandoned. They don't discuss anything about George Harrison saying it's rubbish, which is what I'd been hearing prior, that he was the one who said no because it was rubbish. And of course, there's been conflicting reports about that, whether he thought the song was rubbish or just it's just the recording quality is rubbish. We just can't make it happen. That's been a bone of contention, heavily debated on the internet as well, as things are. One thing that I want to address that I read in the comments where we discussed episodes 1 through 3 was, and I've heard it on other online sources too, where the opinion has been expressed that certain things were cut out to fit the current political climate, quote unquote. And the two things that I've heard pointed out are the fact that in the original anthology, there is a sequence where John Lennon is kind of mocking or joking around by acting like he's mentally retarded or crippled, that type of thing. Disabled, yeah, the mentally disabled, that he's kind of joking around, goofing on that, And also the sequence where George Harrison talks about how when they went to France, they were expecting girls. And instead it was a bunch of guys. And he makes some joke about gay Frenchmen yelling out, Ringo, Ringo, And that this was cut out because of, again, Disney's the villain. And because of political correctness, that type of thing. And in response to that, I will, of course, say again, this film is being made, just like with Get Back, this film is being made by Apple and Wingnut. Disney's just the distributor. The same thing happened with Get Back. And a lot of people said, they're going to Disneyfy it. And they're saying, some people are saying that with this too, that it's been Disneyfied. But Get Back, and I want to finish, Get Back, had the F-bombs. It had John Lennon joking about masturbation. It certainly wasn't Disneyfied. Disney did ask Wingnut and Apple, could you censor, the F word and stuff like that. And Wingnut and Apple's response was, no, you take it as is or you don't take it at all. Disney put their hands up and said, okay. So they have no real say-so on this, as far as I can see. They made a suggestion, they asked, but
understandably, I get why.
But getting back to the point I'm trying to make with this is that I, in my lifetime and in my youth, have said things that wish I could take back. I feel were mean, cruel, insensitive, that I'm embarrassed by, that I wish I could take back, but I can't. But luckily, none of it's on film, where it can be like shown and thrown in my face over and over again. I'm kind of lucky in that respect.
Yeah.
And again, any decisions made on this were done by Apple, not by Disney. Apple and Wingnut together working on this project. And so
I can see
if the families of Harrison and Lennon, it's their choice to say, no one's forcing their hand. It's their choice to say, I think that if Dad were here now,
he wouldn't want that out there.
He wouldn't. Yeah, he'd say, "Oh, take that out. I regret saying this," and that's the estate's choice, not Disney's choice, not some woke, politically correct entity that everybody wants to blame everything on, that's making everybody do things. Even though, like I said, a lot of these choices that are made by companies that own these IPs, like Dr. Seuss, it's the estate's deciding this. There's no one pressuring. And so, again, try to remember this is their choice to do it this way. On the Pop Goes the 60s channel, Matt Williamson was talking about how there was some stuff that McCartney said that came off as very cringe even then. And they took it out. And he said, I can understand why. Why would they want to make McCartney look bad? Why would they want to, and maybe he doesn't want it there, but he said, I can understand. I mean, it was cringy then, it's cringy now. Why would they, why make him look worse?
Yeah.
And, in their own documentary, So, yeah. So I just wanted to just put that out there that you may feel differently about things you said in your youth that you do now. And you may say, I really don't want that there. That doesn't reflect who I am now. So, yeah, I just want to put that out there before people start immediately pointing fingers. And especially at Disney, which I'm not going to say is this perfect company.
They are not.
They're as evil as any other company out there.
We're still going to their Christmas party in a couple of weeks.
Anyways. But overall, I think the general consensus about the series overall has been that it's really well done. It's very concise. I think that there could still be a discussion about the making of Now and Then here in the 21st century. But again, there needs to be some distance, I think. But I'm sure there were interviews.
Forever.
I'm sure there was interviews. There was interview footage and stuff shot during the making of Now and Then.
That's why I think
that could be
there's a
resurrected and then
making
put
of.
together. But again, I think even though they may not be present for it, once that gets made, I think there needs to be that perspective of time before you put it together. Just saying. I'm welcome to hear other opinions on that.
And I'm sure you will.
I'm sure I will.
You go through the door.
I sure have. So
Release the hounds.
release the hounds. Exactly. But yeah, I think that for now this is a fitting ending. I think this was more than just a bonus feature, which is what I was expecting. At this point, unless there's something else you feel you need to say, I want to just start now asking everybody to share their thoughts.
It was a dark and stormy evening.
As always, if you like these videos, be sure to hit like. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the patron supporters. Patron supporters get exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel.
You're fierce and mighty.
Indeed. Mostly, though, thank you for stopping by. In a moment, you'll see some links for videos that I've created that I think you might enjoy. I hope you'll check them out. Mostly thank you for stopping by, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.